And we are live, back with another Boxing Squared live stream. Thank you for joining one and all, especially if you're listening on archive after the fact. So a number of topics on my list to get to. So it's been not a huge week for the heavyweight division this week. A bit of news floating around. We've got Adam Fahey, who's just joined the building. He says, yo, yo, hello to you too, Adam Fahey, a fellow New Zealander. We've got Brennan Smith in the building, so hello to you too. A number of things going on. It was a shame that the Gorman and Larty fight was cancelled for this weekend on that Anthony Yard card, which is just wrapped up. There is actually a few decent fights on that one, decent watches, but I'm not going live to talk about that. Sorry, I just got a little bit of an itch on my beard moustache, or sorry about that. So we've got Unga in the building. Pete Morgan is also here. He says, happy to be with you live again. Keep up the awesome content. Well, it's been a little bit lighter from me this weekend, this week I should say. There hasn't been a lot to sort of preview, get into prediction videos. Some of the news has also felt a little bit like Groundhog Day as well, and you'll get the sense of that with some of the topics that we're covering, because some of it feels like we've been here before, but we'll get to that. But there's also some comments that Dillian Whyte had made this week about that he wasn't knocked out. As he put it, talking to the BBC, wasn't Sparko. So that is something that I actually did go back and have a look at the footage. You know, I've gone back this morning just before coming live to check, well, what actually did go on there? Because he says that he thought, he was trying to get up. He heard the referee talking about 6 or 7. But certainly having a look for that, the actual video evidence doesn't really sort of seem to support that. And sorry, I'm just putting the thumbnail up. Now I've saved that. Okay, so yeah, I went back this morning, so we'll talk about that first, I guess, and went on to Wilder Fury 3, which they're again talking about that new stadium in Las Vegas, and again December, which is the date we already knew of. So yeah, we'll talk about that in a moment. But yeah, Dillian Whyte saying that he wasn't Sparko, and I'll get to that quote in a minute. But I did go back this morning because I thought, well, okay, well, if he says that wasn't the case and he believes that he heard the referee say 6 or 7, I'll go back and have a look what actually happened there. And from what I saw, Alexander Povetkin landed that shot. It dropped Dillian Whyte heavily, and he certainly looked to be knocked out with his senses separated. At least, I mean, I don't know what he says. It was just a knockdown, but it looked like he was knocked out. And the referee never administered a count. He actually, before he even knelt down, he already was waving it off. And then someone came up to the ring apron to help the referee start turning Dillian Whyte on his side. So, I mean, part of me thinks that this from Whyte is part of him just mentally trying to, I guess, rebuild after that loss. He's trying to sort of minimize what happened to some extent, because he wants to basically sort of, front that he wasn't badly hurt as we all know that he was. And I do wonder if that's sort of part of it. Or maybe he's misremembering. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? I definitely thought that he was knocked out. I definitely thought that, there's certainly, looking back at it, there was no count from the referee. So what are your thoughts on that? So I'm just doing a few back-end things on here, trying to put the thumbnail up, etc. So, okay, getting back to the chat here. 20 in the building. Unga says, just watch Patreon vid. Excellent as always. So yes, I just uploaded my weekly Patreon video, which is a topical issue this week. I focused on older fighters. It's the situation with Danny Williams, and so I'm not going to so much talk about what happened there in this live stream, but yeah, there's certainly some concerns for older fighters that maybe get overlooked, and maybe that instance with Williams does highlight a few things. I think there is an acceptance that a lot of guys are fighting older these days in the heavyweight division, but with that comes danger too, and it doesn't necessarily mean because they're fighting longer that they can take the punishment. And maybe in 15 or 20 years we're going to see some of that sort of coming to fruition with CTE related issues. As it is, I'm sure you can think of a number of fighters who, already in the midst of their career, and some of these guys, quite young, that they're certainly sounding different, talking different to just 2, 3, 4 years ago. And actually Dave Allen, and I put this up on my Twitter and I referred to it in my Patreon vid, he's come out saying that he would like to donate some of his purses, and he's calling for other fighters to do so they can keep Danny Williams out of the ring, saying that basically, you know, it's I'm paraphrasing here because I can't exactly remember it all. Actually, I'll just bring it up because it's going to take me just a second, so I'll just get to Twitter. And there's some irony with this as well, with the Allen comment, because obviously, as people have already been sort of pointing out, you know, he's a guy that many people would not like to see fight again. He says of Williams, he shouldn't be near a ring, he needs saving. And his actual post, the sort of writing side, which is like on the graphic part of it, says, just seen Danny Williams' latest fight. I am willing to give some of my future purses to him to help him do whatever it is he is still boxing for, and I'm sure other boxers would join me in doing so, even if it's a small percentage. Someone help me. And in the comment side of his post on Instagram, because bearing in mind he doesn't have Twitter anymore, he shut that down about a year ago, he says, surely other people in boxing are seeing what's happening to this man, others with more power and wealth than me. He shouldn't be near a ring. He needs saving sooner than later. I'm willing to do whatever it takes after seeing his last fight really upset me. Cops are not coming for me, I'll just make that clear. His last fight really upset me, so I hope this message don't fall on deaf ears. Someone help me, help him. It's so sad. I like the gesture there from Allen, but maybe there needs to be a little bit of self-reflection on his part there, because many people, especially after the Price loss, especially after the Yoka loss, and some of the comments he's made about him feeling mentally a certain way after, you know, boxing, not training, but also physically suffering the after effects and headaches and all sorts of stuff that he's disclosed publicly. You know, there is obviously an irony about his comment about helping Williams, who I would hope we're not seeing Dave Allen fighting in 20 years' time. Getting back to the chat, though. So Sid Master says he really heard a count. Yeah, well, he says that he heard the referee say 6 or 7. I'll get to that exact quote right now. I just remember falling and the referee saying 6, 7, and then after tried to get up and the referee was saying, nah, it's a heavy knockdown, blah, blah, blah. I was all right. I wasn't like Sparko. I can't say, oh, I didn't get dropped. It was a great shot to the point of the chin and I got dropped, but I was all right. I was up straight after. I was cool. See, going back and looking at it, there was no count administered. He looked like he was knocked out, at least for, you know, a number of seconds that he was separated from his senses. The referee and someone else who came to the ring apron was pulling him onto his side, and he was not in any position to get up. He was not all right. I don't think he would have been able to get up immediately as he claims. The referee could have, you know, held him down with a feather at that point because he was not getting up. So I think, as I alluded to earlier, some of what he's saying there about not being Sparko, as he puts it, is more about him preparing himself mentally for the rematch. He's trying to move past what happened, and he can, in his mind, live with it as being a knockdown as opposed to a knockout. I think maybe that's just what this is in this sort of situation. Will Magic Man says he was definitely in the twilight zone. Adam says as he climbed out of the ring, he was still very hazy as he asked for a rematch. Debater of everything, presenter of nothing, technical count out. The ref had to stop him from choking on his own tongue. Well, there was no, you know, sort of count administered. I mean, going back and having a look at this morning, the referee frantically waving it off, you know, half a second after he hit the deck, and he hit that deck very heavily. Tony says, I love Dillian. He was knocked out cold, lights out, but he will win the rematch. And this is the thing. It's going to be a very interesting rematch for a lot of the reasons that we talked about for the first fight. Can Dillian Whyte avoid some of the biggest and best punches from Alexander Povetkin? Is Povetkin, you know, a bit old, tired, and slow now? Will he be able to get the job done? And, yeah, I think a lot of people have sort of forgotten. Ahead of that sort of stoppage, Povetkin, while he was landing some decent shots, he was certainly, I thought he looked like he'd lost a step from the Hunter fight, that he looked slower. I didn't think it was a great performance by Povetkin, but certainly it was a magic finish. You can't sort of take that away. That was a fantastic finish. So Wallace 0071 says, good morning from Melbourne. Povetkin and Parker will be champ by 2021. It'd be, yeah, I don't know about that. I mean, just being able to get title shots at the moment, that seems to be half the issue. James Baker says, g'day. Will Magic Man says, hello to you too, James. Will Magic Man says, I think I saw the ghostly apparition of Whyte trying to leave his body while he lay on the canvas. Well, there was a little bit of that. It was a pretty, spectacular knockout. JD80 says, what happens if Dillian gets KO'd again by Povetkin? Game over like David Price. Well, there will be shades of Price and Tony Thompson. I was talking about that a week or so ago in a Patreon video, actually, that maybe it was 2 weeks ago. That's actually, what, the best part of 3 weeks ago now. Man, time has gone fast. But yeah, I think it's a long way back for a title shot if he loses to Povetkin another time. And when I say a long way back, maybe 2 years, but given he was on the cusp of getting one and he's turned down other opportunities, certainly it will feel like a long time. Woker Sam says, you heard about COVID in Britain. You think Chisora versus Usyk is still on? Yeah, I've been a little bit skeptical about Usyk and Chisora, and also Joyce and Dubois. It does, because the financial side of things is so big with that they have to have the crowd revenue to supplement whatever they're getting for TV, or they're doing the pay-per-view, or that sort of stuff. It's not insignificant in terms of them making money for the event. Sure, the fighters need to get paid, and they will, be a priority, but the promoters of both of those fights don't want to take a loss right now on any event. Because if it's a big loss, it might be hard to recover from, especially Joyce and Dubois. I mean, I understand why Warren is so, cautious about putting that one on in October or November. Adam Fahey says, if Povetkin vs. Whyte is made for the date suggested, November 14 or 21, then I see Povetkin winning by KO again. Whyte was brutally KO'd. From that date, he will be suspended for 30 days. Yeah, it certainly is one of these things, for me at least, I think the sooner it happens, I actually think that favours Povetkin, not necessarily Whyte. I mean, what sort of potential physical and psychological damage will be Whyte carrying over into that rematch? Sure, talking a good game in public, but, there could be some things lingering with it. But, yeah, I would feel more sort of confident in picking Whyte if it was, say, in 6 to 9 months' time. Remembering this past week, they were expected to actually announce the rematch. We were told, expect something in this week, and it's come and gone. So maybe cooler heads are prevailing here and going, does it need to be November? I don't know. We'll see what happens there. Steve says, Dillian trying to relive the moment Povetkin rocked his existence. Debater says the count didn't reach 3, or there was no count. Brennan says, I'm looking forward to Fury Wilder 3. I'll get to that topic in a moment. Tony says he was asleep. He would never beat any count. Yeah, I don't think he would have answered a count of 30. Yeah, he may have wanted to. He may have woken up thinking it was a 6 or 7 count. Yeah, his body was not going to get up for some time, and obviously they were taking precautions with him. But yeah, as I say, there was no count administered. So yeah, so Debater says he was dreaming for 7 seconds. He was at least knocked out. I'm pretty confident from watching it again this morning. He was clearly knocked out, not just knocked down as Whyte claims. The only thing Whyte heard was his soul leaving his body. Oh, that's a ruthless assessment there. Brennan says Povetkin will probably win again. Well, he's certainly going to be in the fight again. We know that. AZ says Povetkin is really slow. I think Whyte beats him in the rematch. And this is the thing. I mean, this is why it was a 60-40 fight the first time around, that Povetkin was dangerous, Whyte was hittable, and Povetkin took advantage. Even though he was slow in that first fight, he's still, and this is where we're coming to another topic soon, because obviously Johnny Nelson has apologized about the lucky punch comments, and that's probably because the overwhelming majority of the public just thought that was another laughable Johnny Nelson comment. So we're coming to that. Actually, I'll just get to that now, because Johnny Nelson obviously saying that enraged a lot of fans, because that punch clearly was like 30 years in the making, trained for, was part of their strategy. He was looking for that punch, and he landed that one. he clearly was looking to set Whyte up for that. So, you know, we could all see that that wasn't just some sort of lucky punch. And for those that believe it was a lucky punch, well, I don't know what to tell you. Even Johnny Nelson's walking that back now, saying, because I was so emotionally invested in our boy, I didn't give Povetkin credit. Looking at the fight again, it was a wicked shot. Dillian made a mistake, and that was the same shot he got caught against Anthony Joshua. Maybe it's not like for like exactly between the Joshua and the Povetkin ones. You know, Povetkin obviously did a couple of different things to the way Joshua did in the setup. But anyway, it was, you know, it was obviously the left uppercut. But Johnny Nelson walking back his statements. But as I tweeted the other day, we're one major apology down from Johnny Nelson, one to go. In 2018, Johnny Nelson said Tony Bellew is more technical than Alexander Usyk. And that was an outrageous assessment at that point, so never forget. We need to lobby him to take that one back too, because clearly that was one of the biggest clangers that he's ever come out with. And maybe this lucky punch one actually topped it, but at least he's sort of read the sort of room here and decided to walk back those comments. And possibly some of it too is pressure from Sky. If they're going to run this rematch back, they don't want to hear lucky punch. They want to actually be sort of pushing at the public that Povetkin, with his skills and abilities, because remembering there's a few marketing hurdles to overcome here. Povetkin wasn't meant to win. He was a guy who was, you know, 40 at the time. He would be 41 for the rematch. They need to be bigging him up as much as possible for the rematch, that he's going to present the challenge that could, you know, make or break Whyte's career. And lucky punch doesn't factor into that sort of narrative. So that could be one reason that Nelson has walked it back. But I'm glad he has, because it was a stupid comment. Stupid then. And even the comment there is saying that he was emotionally invested in our boy. I mean, this sort of comes to the heart, even within the apology. It's basically saying he was too invested in the house fighter. And this is the problem with the commentary on Sky that we're all complaining about constantly. They just can't call it as they see it. There was a lot of good work Povetkin did in that fight which wasn't getting called. And as we know, all sorts of fights, there's all sorts of nonsense. The house fighter, you know, if they the opponent lands a punch, they'll give credit to the house fighter for their chin as opposed to the punch being landed by the opponent. I mean, it just, yeah, it makes me mad sometimes watching it, because you're seeing these shots landing, you're like, just call it. Come on, just call it. You know you want to call it. Just call it. Okay, getting back to the chat here. We'll race for food. Greetings from Poland. It's 1:30 AM here. I way that Povetkin wins the rematch. Yeah, I think in many people's minds, say that first fight might have been like 60-40. They may sort of consider now that it's, you know, 50-50, or some people may have Povetkin as a favourite to repeat. And shades of Tony Thompson versus David Price could be in people's minds here as well. George says Dillian Whyte will have him in the rematch. That's very possible. It's not, you know, I'm not writing Whyte off at all. I think this is going to be a very intriguing rematch, because we knew that Whyte was hittable and he got taken out, but it doesn't mean that he can't come back. But, you know, what's the strategy? What's the adjustments? And even if he makes adjustments, is that going to be enough? Or is Alexander Povetkin too wily for him? And he has the ability and skills and technique that he's able to, you know, make up for other shortcomings in terms of maybe speed, reach, other things. Yeah, I mean, there's lots of interesting storylines. JD says Povetkin set Whyte up real bad. That KO was vicious. Steve says Matchroom Mafia. Okay, someone's just retracted that comment. Liam says, hey Boxing Squared, hope you're having a good day. Who is your personal pick for Fury Joshua? Oh, that's a hard question. Some of these fights that at the moment they're off in the distance and they're not made, I try not to think too much about, because I don't want to get my hopes up, because that's all we've been doing the last couple of years for some of these big fights, especially in an undisputed fight. I think maybe I would lean to Fury, but I mean, I don't think that's as a bigger sort of, I know some people sort of say Fury will just school him. I don't think there's I think it's going to be a much more competitive fight than people believe. I think Joshua certainly could win that fight. Yeah, I'm not ruling, I mean, but I would need to think about that and write some notes and do a proper prediction video, because some of these things, I mean, you got pro, con, you know, a counterpoint for certain things, and yeah, I've got to spend more time thinking about that one. Forsco's Fabio says, thoughts on proposed 225-pound super cruiserweight division. We've covered that one before, so I don't want to really go into it, but yeah, not a fan. Lubak says, what's up, Boxing Squared? Well, Sunday morning here, just before lunchtime, so there's some of the Top Rank card coming up this afternoon, which I'll be watching. AZ says, Usyk keeps training. I really hope Chisora fight happens. Yeah, I mean, so do I. Some of these fights, if they don't happen now, like the Usyk and Chisora one, maybe that's not going to happen at all. It may end up being that Usyk just ends up going straight into a title fight in 2021. I don't think they're going to risk losing money on that fight if they can help it. First Round Boxing says, Whyte deserves credit for taking such hard fights, but eventually it catches up with you. I mean, just compare Whyte fighting someone like Joseph Parker compared to Wilder's title defences. Whyte does deserve credit for his opposition. He's certainly got one of the better resumes in the heavyweight division. Debater says that would make Wilder a super cruiserweight. Throw that suggestion in the bin. I think there would be a number of fighters, if they end up coming up with that one, that'll sort of go between. I mean, someone like Povetkin fits right into that one right now. Lubak says Whyte always has loses concentration during fights, so Povetkin has his number. Potentially. We're going to have to see the rematch. I'm going to have to run it back. We'll see what happens. But it will be, again, a good fight, a competitive fight, and one where a lot of the same questions we'll be asking into the rematch as we did for the first fight. Will Magic Man says, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Leave the weight categories alone. Hilly451 says, good man, Right Hook Boxing is in the building. He says, how's it going? Late one at this end. Yeah, I'm sure if it's in the UK, it must be coming up, what, 1 o'clock in the morning, something like that. So hello to one and all, wherever you are in the world. 48 in the building at this point, so we're 21 minutes into the stream. Yeah, so it's been a busy week here at my end work-wise, and there wasn't actually a lot happening in the division. So yeah, I decided, well, because I've got a lot going on at work and there's not a lot happening, I'll just sort of button back this week, because actually there's not a lot of opportunities during the year, because boxing being a year-round sport, I mean, COVID aside and the couple of months there, but generally it's like and I'm sure Right Hook Boxing and anyone else with a YouTube channel will know, it is a bit of a grind. You get into the sort of the routine and the pattern, putting out videos, you know, at least one a day, or, you know, maybe one every second day, and you sort of get into a routine of it. So it was a bit different only having, I did a live stream on Wednesday, and that's the only thing I put up on the channel this week, apart from obviously this live stream. And I've just put my weekly video up to Patreon, so patreon.com/Boxing Squared. So I was sort of talking about the older fighter issue, which was again highlighted by the Danny Williams stoppage this week. So if you want to check that out, topical issues. I do for Patreon generally videos that don't date as quickly as the news ones that I might do on the channel. So if you're listening in 3 months' time, it should, you know, for the most part still be relevant. So if you do want to check that out, that is there. So from as little as $1 US a month. So that's my plug for that. First Round Boxing says, new weight classes, more belts, it's just what we need. Well, that's just exactly what the sanctioning bodies want. I saw Mauricio Suleiman defending all the belts, all the sort of shenanigans, and basically sort of saying that they're a non-profit, but the money is going somewhere, and there's a reason they want the money. AZ says, Johnny Nelson is laughable in every comment. Debater says, Whyte's punch on Chisora was more luck than the uppercut he ate. Well, I mean, again, I would say it wasn't a lucky shot. He was looking to catch Chisora with that shot through the fight. And obviously, the 11th round, it found the target. It was on the money, and he took Chisora out. Had that been in round 2, maybe it wouldn't have had the same sort of effect. But obviously, Whyte does carry his power. So, you know, that was a great shot from Whyte against Chisora in the rematch. Adam Fahey says, Johnny Nelson, the streets don't forget. No, they do not. First Round Boxing says, my official prediction is Parker stoppage, but the fanboy in me says Junior Farr pulls off the upset. Hashtag Team Farr. If and when they make that fight, I do make Joseph Parker a favourite to win that one. AZ says, Tony Bellew more technical than Usyk. I will never forget that, yeah. Will Magic Man says, Johnny had to acquiesce. Good. Brennan says Whyte is not good at taking uppercuts. Well, there certainly is a little bit of a theme developing there. Lubak says the weights need modernising as fighters are getting taller and heavier. A 6'1", 220-pound guy fighting a 6'9", 290-pound guy is dangerous. Yeah, but boxing is just dangerous in general. So Force Ghost Fabio with the super chat there, much appreciated. He says, could Tom Schwartz beat any of the WBA champions? No, not even. I think Trevor Bryan would dismantle Tom Schwartz. He's German domestic level. That's where he's sort of been operating and proven that he can operate. So I don't even think he's European at this point. Lisa says White all the way. Adam says Sky have to sell 3 pay-per-views in a month, so they got to sell it again. Well, that could be part of the reason, as I mentioned, that Johnny Nelson has taken back the Lucky Punch comment, because they need to promote that as this is repeat or revenge, and this is going to be an incredibly hard fight, all of which is true. And a Lucky Punch narrative that Nelson had been spinning doesn't sort of cut the mustard when you're trying to sell this is a tough fight. AZ says that's why we don't like Sky commentary. They are biased for the house boxer. Tony says, regardless of who White fights in the future, they will all be looking to land that same uppercut. Well, Rivas found it too, but yeah, that just could be one of those things that he's susceptible to it. I mean, someone was just talking about Junior Farr a moment ago. Farr is susceptible to the left hook, so I mean, I'm sure Parker will be looking for that punch. I mean, Joshua's been found to be susceptible to a left hook as well. There's, you know, all manner of fighters have got their kryptonite punch. UK Low says yard fight stopped early tonight. Well, I was watching that card on and off because I was working on a few different bits and pieces, including my Patreon vid, so I actually missed the stoppage there. So if someone could drop in the chat actually what happened. I think I saw up until round 5, so about 10 minutes later I came back and it was all over, but I wasn't sure exactly what happened, except I was pretty confident Yard had probably got a stoppage. Unger says, no good stoppage. Spellman was getting beaten up. Adam says it would have only led to a beating and he fought only 6 weeks ago. Okay, so that's what happened in that fight. Well, yeah, Spellman having fought Lyndon Arthur, what was it, 6 weeks, 8 weeks ago? That's, yeah. He was never going to win this fight. UK Low says my stream went down rounds 3 to 5. Steve says Johnny Nelson has no credibility left as a commentator. Complete joke at this point. Well, we know that as a fighter and with his experience, he's got a lot to offer. But you know, some of these guys, the longer they're in certain roles, and this is not just for Sky, it's for other broadcasters around the world. It's like sometimes they start out and you think, yeah, they're actually doing a good job, but they become company men over time, and some of the narratives that they try to push you end up like, it's ridiculous. JD80 says there's still no confirmation on the trilogy fight between Fury and Wilder, no date or location. So I'll get to that comment now in terms of the next topic. So Wilder Fury 3, so Bob Arum saying, that's what we're moving ahead on all fronts, with the security, with the virus and everything. We're talking with everybody here in town, with the Raiders, so we're optimistic that we'll be able to do the event in Nevada, in Las Vegas. And they are looking to do it at the Allegiant Stadium, maybe 10 to 15,000 fans, so there'd be some social distancing, space between fans. They're still looking at the same date, December 19, but and this is what I was talking about at the top of the stream. Some of it just feels like the same stuff we're hearing over and over. I mean, we heard this from Bob Arum maybe 2 months ago, and maybe a couple of months before that. It really is just rinse and repeat. And this is another topic too, which I had on my list that I wanted to sort of roll in with this one. Daniel Dubois and Joe Joyce. So one of Frank Warren's sons was quoted this week. Still October, possibly November, maybe a crowd, maybe not. We're going to talk to the fighters, got to talk to the broadcaster. It's all the same thing, different day. And it's a shame for us as the fans, because all these big fights and the ones that we're really interested in, or at least the ones that have been made, they just keep getting pushed back and back and back. Feels like it's holding up the heavyweight division. And this week, where there was basically no fights to really sort of speak of in the heavyweight division, I mean, there was Senad Gashi, he was fighting actually today versus Adnan Redzovic, so I caught part of that one, and Gashi was letting his hands go, got a stoppage in that one. Apologies just for a sec, I've just got a cough. Just have a bit of water. Sorry for that. Okay, we're all good to go now. So Gashi, he can look really fun and entertaining when he lets his hands go. Doesn't just really happen. When you consider that that might have been the most high-profile fight of the weekend, doesn't say much about the state of the division right now, about the fights that are not being made and not happening because of people are waiting and watching, and you know, they don't want to sort of put guys in, and the short money is preventing fights getting made. But there's it's a different world now. The pandemic, yes, at some point these guys are going to need to get their careers going again, and in the interim they might have lost 6 months, maybe 12 months. There's going to be some guys, and I was talking about this on Patreon recently in a video, that are going to miscalculate. They're going to think that, you know, they can just keep demanding certain amounts of money for their purses, and it won't be there. And some guys will get it wrong, and then all of a sudden they might have lost 12, 18 months, 2 years, and then their careers may never be the same. Some of their primes might actually not pan out the way that we would have hoped for, or that they had hoped for. So Moore says, I'm late. Hit the like button, please, folks. Yes, please. Tony says, heavyweight division is already too small. No need for more belts. Yeah, I wouldn't like to see any more divisions. But, I mean, as someone raised, well, maybe in terms of, because what is it, 17 weight divisions at the moment? Even to me, that feels too much. And there is a situation where you have guys cramming themselves into the smallest division possible, which in itself there's concerns with, you know, weight cuts and the effect on people's bodies. And, you know, we saw just recently, was it Caleb Truex, or there was someone who pulled out of a fight just in the last couple of weeks, had a bad weight cut, and it was, was dehydrated from cutting too much weight too late. G. Dorman says, big up from the UK, love your content. Well, thank you for joining the live stream here. So it must be, what, Saturday night in the UK. So it's Sunday morning, almost lunchtime here. So it'll be early in the UK. It must be sort of mid to late afternoon or early evening in the United Kingdom, Canada way. Australia a couple of hours behind, and so wherever you are in the world, I thank you for joining, one and all, wherever you are, morning, noon or night. 69 in the building at the moment. Thank you for joining the Boxing Squared live stream. So we've got through the first couple of topics. There was a couple of other things, a couple of fight announcements. Lucas Rozansky, he's going to be back in the ring September 19th, facing a journeyman, Ozkan Setankaya. That's going to be in Poland. You've got Victor Vikhurst, and this card was already announced. Ali Aaron Demirashian is the headliner. Victor Vikhurst, a young Ukrainian prospect, he'll be facing a journeyman in Gabriel Nguema for his third fight. Not a bad fight for a guy with just 2 fights under the belt. But yeah, in terms of big announcements, not a lot coming up. But there's a few other good topics that I want to come to. But I'll just quickly back to the chat, try to get closer to the bottom of the... it moves so quickly sometimes it's hard to keep up. Pete Morgan says, I'm sure the WBA would love an excuse to chuck 4 more belts around. Probably in their case, it might even be more than 4. Adam says, this Saturday coming, F.A. Ajagba versus Jonathan Rice in his top rank debut. Is it Jonathan Rice? I haven't actually hadn't seen that. I had seen it was still TBA. Maybe was it yesterday or a day before? So whatever the case, like that fight, it's again another sort of right fight at the right time for F.A. Ajagba. It's at a level where he can be tested and pushed to a degree, but he should still win it, and he should get something out of it. So I will be doing a preview video on that in the coming week. AZ says Schwartz isn't good enough, and I agree on that. Debater says, I have Dave Allen beating Tom Schwartz. I think that probably would happen. Graham says Schwartz is not top 25. He may not even be top 50. Brennan says Tom has won a fight after the Fury fight. Yeah, that was just a quick tune-up, and then he's actually fallen foul of his promoters because there were some allegations that he punched a woman. So that sort of situation is still being resolved. Redian Smith says, apologies if I got the pronunciation wrong there, Dave Allen versus Gashi would be interesting, or Schwartz. Actually, I think Dave Allen versus Gashi would be interesting, and that was a fight that they almost made back in 2018, and Allen thought it was quite funny because he was sort of saying, you know, Gashi sounded like Gash. But instead, I think it was Samir Nebo that ended up being the opponent. But Allen versus Gashi, I think, would be entertaining, because I think Gashi would feel that Allen was hittable enough, but ultimately Allen might be able to wear Gashi down. But it should be fun. Will Magic Man says, late replying, I understand what you mean about danger, but boxing is and always has been a dangerous sport, and there have been 6'6" guys around since forever. Well, I think at some point, you know, there just is a limit. I mean, even if you were to set the limit at 230 pounds or 240 pounds, you're still going to get guys that might be closer to 300, and there could be a weight difference of, you know, what, 20, 30, 40, 50 pounds. In some cases, even more. I mean, remembering, what was it, Jarrell Miller versus Thomas Adamek, there was something like a 100-pound difference. It was incredible. Adam says, interesting to see who Bryant Jennings is coming back for. I think he was set for October the 31st return. I think it might have been October the 24th, but yeah, he sort of shadowed that out there that he'll be fighting, but yeah, wouldn't say who. So yeah, it is interesting. I mean, but also, where is he going to be fighting? Because I don't know. Is he still with Top Rank, or is he a free agent? What's actually happening? And another fight, interesting, what's actually happening, because no official announcement, is Christopher Lovejoy versus Trevor Bryan, which supposedly set. Lovejoy keeps talking on social media the 3rd of October, which is only about 3 weeks away. So you'd think if they want to, if that fight is happening, they'd want to actually announce it and promote it. I haven't seen anything. So if you have, please drop something in the chat there. But yeah, I'm seeing Lovejoy talking a lot about it, but not Trevor Bryan. So yeah, or Don King for that matter. So AZ says he doubts that Joyce and Dubois will happen at all at this point. Yeah, it's looking more remote for this year at happening, especially if they can't get a crowd. Michael B says he wants to see Povetkin win the rematch just to hear Johnny Nelson shut up about a lucky punch. Well, that was one of the most unfortunate comments that was made post-fight there. So Debater says, if Povetkin wins again, Nelson will label him the luckiest man to ever live. Mick Boswell says Dillian should not have changed trainer. This was his downfall. Well, as I said in the lead up to that first fight, I definitely think there would have, I think, you know, with this maximum violence talk that he was, you know, sort of talking about, and having the change of trainer to Xavier Miller, that was actually that he otherwise would have been under his old trainer, which, you know, I think there would have been more of that safety first sort of approach that would have been, that we saw in the Chisora rematch, and also Oscar Rivas. And apologies, his name just is slipping me, his old trainer, Mark, oh god, it's just, yeah, someone's got to put that in the chat there. So that's yeah, all of a sudden it's just disappeared from my mind. 11-0, there is a case to say that he should have stayed with you know, the same trainer, shouldn't have moved on, but clearly something has happened, and he believes that, you know, it was time to move on. And I would hazard a guess it had to do with money, but you never really know. We're never going to get the full story here. Will Magic Man says the idiom behind closed doors being bandied around in the sport lately is totally the wrong phrase to use. Behind closed doors means to be carried out secretly. These fights are no secret. Eliphus 3333 says Nelson saying Povetkin got White with a lucky punch was ridiculous. Completely agree. Mark Tibbs. So yeah, that just had disappeared from my memory banks for, you know, just it was on the tip of my tongue. So thank you for DJN and Adam Fahey for saying that. Steve says, Squared, what line of work are you in? I remember you previously mentioned having been a journo or something. Well, that was a previous career from, I've actually been out of journalism for, what is it, 8 years now. So I moved into other sort of work, communications type work, also political communications. And since then I've worked in roles in the public service within New Zealand, but I don't want to say too much. But yeah, so I do have different sort of skills across a few different, you know, industries, I guess you would say. But I was at one point a journalist, and that was for about 10 years of my working life or so. Bacon and Eggs says, hey mate, how you been? Not too bad. Busy here, just with, I was saying a couple of weeks ago, I was just starting a new job. I'd picked up a new contract, so that's for 6 months. About a month into it, but yeah, very heavy workload in the last week or so. So it's, yeah, I haven't had as much time or energy to get some content out the door. So I've actually built a list up pretty much since my last live stream of stuff that I wanted to talk about. So we did at the top of the stream talk about some of the comments from Dillian Whyte, talking about that he wasn't knocked out, the Wilder Fury 3, that sort of rinse and repeat date, and a few other topics in between it, along with your questions. So Will Magic Man says it's nearly 1 AM in the UK. I guess I must be about 10 minutes behind in the chat, because it must be about 6 past or something at the moment. So apologies, I am catching up. So if you've left a comment, I haven't addressed it. I am trying to get down the chat here. Debater says round 4 tells me otherwise, not sure what that's about. Leonard Sterling says they claim 15k has already sold for Dubois vs Joyce, only a 10% return. It was not the plan for pay-per-view, so they need a gate revenue. No crowd probably go pay-per-view. Well, that is actually, I've heard a lot of people saying the plan wasn't for pay-per-view, but back when they announced it, it was going to be on pay-per-view. It was going to be a BT Sport pay-per-view. That's actually in my original video from, when was it, February or whatever, when they announced it for April. So the plan was always pay-per-view for that fight. So I don't know if they're trying to, say, I've seen this around, people saying that it wasn't me. Lubak says Rosansky versus Romanov or Babic makes sense. Sort of, especially in the WBO, like Rosansky and Romanov rankings, and had different decent-ish wins in the past year or so. Where's the path that they're going down? They need to be starting to fight each other, start ordering some eliminators. I wouldn't mind any of those fights. JD80 says Lewis Ritson versus Miguel Vasquez, October 19th in England. Who you got winning that fight? Gotta say, don't know too much about Vasquez, so probably not the best person to ask about that. Dirty Duck says Dillian Whyte calls him Tom Shorts. AZ says Lovejoy and Bryant, two jokers will never fight each other. Yeah, I could see that date passing and never really getting an explanation about what happens or doesn't happen with that fight. Unger says White didn't follow corner instructions. Yeah, maybe that could be part of it too. I mean, certainly after he started to land a bit more and he got more confident, and he dropped Povetkin a couple of times, he was holding his feet. But heading into the fight, I said that in my preview video, if White tries to box with Povetkin won't mind that at all. And I think even though White was having success, Povetkin was never out of the fight. Sure, he was looking a bit slow, a little bit plodding, and wasn't, really managing to, get some of the work away that he wanted to. And I think some of that was down to White was actually boxing well, but Povetkin was looking like he was a step slower than we've seen him before. But obviously the skill and the pedigree was still there. Unger says he defaulted to Tibbs' style, trying to fight off the ropes. Being trained by Tibbs wouldn't have changed the outcome, in his opinion, says Unger. The Shopper says White has always had sloppy defense. His response to being hit is to keep hitting back, so it was just a matter of time till someone hit him with the sweet chin music. And that was another thing I said in the lead up in my preview video. Was it going to be that step too far? He had been hit, he had been hurt, he had been dropped by others. Was there going to be sort of a fall short moment? And it has proven so. But ultimately, the rematch, I mean, if he gets beaten again, there's, that's certainly going to be a pretty bitter pill to swallow to come back from. The title shot will just go up in smoke. So Adam says you could clearly hear Dave Coldwell yelling, "Don't lean over Dill," about putting his chin over his front foot, but he still clearly did it. Brennan says, I do think we will get Wilder Fury 3 fight soon. Yeah, I mean, we will get it. I think that's just a matter of time till it happens, but, they've just got to lock it in. I mean, all these fights that we've been talking about and just re-talking about and re-talking about, let's get them made and done. So then we can move on and we've got some fresh fodder to talk about. Because some of these ones, it's dragged on all year, really. And, and I understand some of the reasons why, but at some point, they're going to have to pull the trigger. If there is a new normal, they have to adapt to it. Unger says, WBC saying they want to make Usyk versus Wilder for first Super Cruiserweight title. WBC will say whatever the WBC wants to say. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if they even order that. Bobby says you deserve more viewers, unbiased, well-informed channel. We'll appreciate the feedback there. So I'll get back to my list. Interestingly, though, Jared Anderson. So I've got a quote here. This was popped up on Boxing Scene during the week. He says, "We're ready for everyone. We're building up. Bob is moving me perfectly. It was about getting those rounds in and showing I can really box. I'm not just a puncher. I know how to box, and I know how to stay on my back foot." And something about that comment sort of explains to me something I had been thinking about. Because there was moments in that fight where it sort of seemed like Jared Anderson was almost trying a little bit too hard to showcase his diverse, his sort of diverse range of skills that he does have. That he was sort of, acting as a pressure fighter at one point. Then he switched up going southpaw, and then he was working a bit more off the back foot, boxing a bit more, and lowered his volume and was going for more accuracy. And I kind of thought, some of it at the time felt a little bit unnecessary. That, what is Jared Anderson in terms of his main style that he's going to look to bring? I mean, sure, certain opponents are going to vary it up, but it was just a whole mishmash of different things that he was just sort of putting on display, and I wasn't really sort of sure why and if it was necessary. But that quote from Anderson sort of got me thinking, okay, well, he's against Rodney Hernandez, it's fine to do that. You're going to get away with it. It's probably something, but also what was the value of some of that too? Because I mean, arguably at different points he looked a little bit off the boil. Getting back to the chat here, Force Ghost Fabio says, BS and Boxing Bros are my favourite boxing channels. Eliphas3333 says, did they really say that, Unger? That is ridiculous. Ha ha. Oh, of the WBC. Adam says, clearly Bob rates Guido and Jared above Sonny Konto, fast becoming the forgotten man. And Unger says Konto is still injured. And it is, he has been injured for a while, and that's a shame. But I mean, they say he is 6'5". I'm very doubtful of that. To me, Konto looks, more like 6'2", 6'3". But there's a number of those guys that, the heights are clearly sort of doctored. But on that, Guido, Jared Anderson, and Sonny Konto, I think maybe there's Jared Anderson is that sort of that top of that sort of pecking order. Maybe then Guido, then Konto. It's hard to know what they're going to do with some of them. I mean, Guido Vianello, his manager, Sam Jones, wants to make a fight with Sonny Konto in Rome early next year. So Sam Jones, that's Guido's manager, is called for that. They like that fight. I mean, I'm still a bit on the fence about Guido Vianello and also Sonny Konto. I want to see, Guido Vianello, just something about him. I wonder if he's going to look vulnerable. I know with some fighters, and often people say this about Tony Yoka, that even though he looks good, there's a slight air of vulnerability. I do get a little bit of a sense about that about Guido Vianello, and I just don't know. So I want to see him against a puncher at some point to really sort of dispel those notions, or perhaps it will prove out. I don't know. Sonny Konto, he could legitimately make cruiserweight like Alan Babbage. I like his skill set and the sort of the stuff that he does, but I still need to see more of him to really know, is he a guy that's going to really mix it at a top 10 level? I mean, as we know, there's a lot of guys that come through, maybe only a handful of, say, 15 or 20 will ever pan out, and some guys will become, guys that will be top 30, solid enough guys, but they're flawed and beatable, and they will be beaten. I wonder if Guido Vianello and Sonny Konto sort of fall into that latter one. I mean, Anderson at 20 years old, and from what we've already seen, and even against the likes of Hernandez, even though he was mixing it up with everything that he was doing, he still ultimately got a pretty impressive stoppage there. I mean, it was kind of seemingly limping towards a decision. It was a 6-rounder. And he ends up stopping him inside the distance, almost out of nowhere. But I was impressed to a point. But I still don't know if Anderson has really decided what sort of fighter he wants to be, or how, for the most part, he's going to attack different fights, because as he climbs the level, just switching up, between different styles and trying to show how versatile you are, I mean, that can sort of end up causing problems in itself. So, yeah. AZ says, how is Gassiev doing? Healthy, still with Abel, or left? Wasn't he meant to have a fight in Russia soon? Actually, that was the next topic on my list. So Murat Gassiev is apparently going to be having a fight at heavyweight at some point. So they're talking about possibly returning in November, and that's according to Russian media. And Russian media quoted, and this was the General Secretary of the Russian Boxing Federation, Umar Kremlev. He was quoted as saying, Murat's promoter and manager are also engaged in the conversation, but there is a proposal to hold a fight in early November in Russia. We are now considering it. And his whole promotional status, because remembering, he ended up signing on with, I think it was it Warriors Boxing or Euro Boxing or both. He was co-promoted by one and then went to another, and apparently had left Matchroom, and then Eddie Hearn came out and said no, he's still on the books. But now with DAZN having cut loose a few fighters, Michael Hunter being maybe the most high profile of the guys who'd fought in the United States. Maybe Gassiev has been cut loose as well. I don't know. The whole thing just has been super strange and super bizarre, and yeah, really sort of a lot of speculation. We just don't really know. And the fact that Gassiev hasn't been in the ring for over 2 years, hasn't fought at heavyweight yet after losing to Alexander Usyk in the World Boxing Super Series Cruiserweight final, which is in July 2018. It feels like such a long time ago. So I'm hoping to see Gassiev at heavyweight, at the weight. Then we can get a bit of an indication about what he can do. Because the guy, I mean, we forget he's still in his mid-20s, so he potentially has a lot to offer. And recent sort of stuff from his social media, he's looking in shape, and he's looking like a proper heavyweight in terms of, I did actually put up on Twitter just a couple of weeks ago a photo from mid-2018, and then it was 2 years later, and he was looking much thicker. And despite whatever injuries he's had as well, he was looking fit and healthy in the recent stuff that's come up on his social media. He's actually one of the few boxers that had taken the opportunity in the last year to actually, with the pandemic and that, he's put up a whole bunch more footage and training stuff. So, I mean, there's actually, for my purposes, for having a channel, that's great. So whenever I cover Gassiev, I've got heaps of stuff to actually put up on screen. Sometimes the need to slow footage down is to stretch it out because you don't have enough to last the 10-minute video. But I would say maybe I've got about 20 minutes of Gassiev at this point. But there's a whole bunch of big-name fighters that don't actually use their social media all that much. Sorry, I just kicked a box over by accident. Okay, so getting back to the chat here. Unger says Gassiev is looking massive and in shape. Yeah, his neck looks huge. Lubak says, with ESPN signing a Jugba and Yoka, will we likely see them fight within 2 years, as the younger fighters like Anderson will be stepping up within 5-6 fights as well? Potentially. I mean, I think they would look to sort of stretch some of that sort of stuff out for as long as possible. It's Top Rank after all. I don't think they're going to burn off their young talent that they're just signing and getting invested in. Remembering they've also got Ajit Caballero as well. So I think they will look to build them against certain levels of opponents. And if they can, at some point, which might be 2 to 3 years down the line, that's when they'll have all these guys who are fully matured and ready to perhaps have in-house title fights, which I'm sure Top Rank would be salivating over. Napoli says, is there anything good on tonight? Do you mean boxing-wise? Well, Mean Machine is on, so Kowalskis against a guy called Zuski, who I don't know too much about. Your Dennis Lyhan says, Gassiev, where you at? Well, he is looking to get back in the ring, apparently. Lubak says Gassiev will end up like Where's Wally? Well, it's been a little bit of that. Lubak says Gassiev versus Povetkin would be fireworks. Well, it's one of those things. It felt kind of like at some point Povetkin was just going to have some sort of like fly off into the sunset type fight, maybe a fight with a Russian counterpart, and I think maybe Sergey Kuzmin for a point in time there felt like he might be the logical successor, but he hasn't really panned out. Gassiev, could he be that guy? I still think that when Povetkin loses his next fight, say if he lost to Whyte in the rematch, I think he would just retire. He would just keep going for as long as he keeps winning. But getting back to my list, I'll just see if there was a couple of things that I hadn't covered here. So Frank Sanchez's manager, he had spoken about publicly that Efe Ajagba and Joseph Parker weren't interested in fights with Frank Sanchez, and these sorts of comments, and it sort of goes back to what I was talking about earlier, that Fury Wilder 3, and then also Joyce and Dubois, some of that sort of stuff. It feels like we hear the same sorts of comments, you know, just recycled every sort of, you know, month or so. You know, it's mostly the same information repackaged and, you know, repurposed for a quick, you know, hit in the media sort of thing. Yeah, I wonder about Frank Sanchez, because seemingly all the talent in the world, the skills are there, the speed. He's looking like a guy that can be a problem for a number of heavyweights, but like a number of other heavyweights at the moment, he's in that sort of stage of his career where he's about 15 fights-ish deep into his career. Think Martin Bacoli as well. Those sorts of guys, low sort of, you know, reward for high-risk fights. So, yeah, I mean, some of the matchmaking, I mean, it's easy to say, oh, we called out, you know, Ajagba, we called out Parker, but how serious any negotiations really were is another question. But some good publicity for Sanchez, but I do hope that he is going to get some good fights. I mean, I'm not here. He's not really in the PBC stable, but he's fought on some PBC cards. Similar in a way that, because he's with Warriors Boxing, but similar in a way to Otto Wallin, who is with Dimitri Salita. He ends up sort of being a plug-and-play type of guy. And I'm aware that Michael Hunter's made some comments about his career on the Boxing Voice this week, and I haven't got to that interview, so I'm looking to do that this afternoon, and possibly putting a video together based on what I sort of get out of that interview. But I did have 3 or 4 people sort of messaging me with some comments that were made, so that does look interesting. And Hunter's one of these guys as well, that now that he's been released from Matchroom, there was optimism that he would be going somewhere and he'd be snapped up, and that just maybe hasn't quite happened. But he's, you know, at a position in his career, highly ranked, highly rated across a number of sanctioning bodies, etc. He'll have expectations about what he wants to get paid. But right now it's a weird time, you know, with the pandemic and such. I mean, what's going to happen with a lot of these fighters that are in those sorts of similar positions? He might sort of be waiting and watching. And even if he is signing on with, I believe he might be having some sort of relationship with Impact Network. That's what I understand from some of the stuff that have been sent through. I mean, where does that lead? I don't know. I have to actually check that out to form a view and an opinion on that. But yeah, the stuff from the live stream, this one here, just, yeah, so Fury Wilder 3. Potentially going to be in December. Dillian Whyte saying that he wasn't Sparko, that he was just dropped, which, you know, when I went back and had a look at that, well, clearly the referee didn't administer a count as Whyte believes. Actually, Whyte saying that he heard the ref say 6 or 7 and say, no, it was you were dropped heavily. That's it. He looked at knocked out to me, and the referee did not administer a count, waved it off before he even knelt. Johnny Nelson apologizing for saying that it was a lucky punch. It's one apology down, 1 to go. Usyk is, Tony Bellew is more technical than Usyk. That was an outrageous comment. Daniel Dubois, Joe Joyce, will they, won't they, in either October or November, or is it going to be, in fact, this year? There's a lot of topics, a lot of things seem to be recycled, regurgitating up. And this was one of the quietest weeks of the, and take out the pandemic period, one of the quietest weeks of the year in terms of the division. You could make a case to say that Senagashi was the premier heavyweight in action this weekend, which says, you know, doesn't say a lot about the state of the division right now. But you have Lucas Brzezinski versus Ozgan Setankaya, that's in Poland, September 19. Victor Vickers confirmed versus Gabriel Nguema, that's for September 20. That's on a card in Ukraine, headlined by Ali Aaron Demirishin, seen in 2019 against Efe Ajagba. Frank Sanchez's manager saying that Parker and Ajagba weren't interested in fighting Sanchez. Jared Anderson saying that he showed that he can box, he's not just a puncher. Murat Gassiev possibly returning in November. So that was the list. I've already gone through the quotes at different times during the live stream, but yeah, we'll take some final comments and questions, and it's 58 minutes into the stream. We're 66 into the building, so wherever you are, morning, noon or night, I do thank you for joining another Boxing Squared live stream. We'll go for however long the next comments go for, and then we'll get out here. So Unger says, Mrs. Povetkin is fireworks. Yes, I did see her on Instagram. That's, yes, Povetkin's doing well for himself. Moore says, with the top fighters prolonging boxing dollars after the pandemic, now is a good chance for lower ranked fighters to get more exposure, maybe. Yes and no, because if you're not already signed with the promoter, you might just find it hard to get that exposure. And Michael Hunter might sort of, he falls into that camp. But I think there is guys that we've seen a number of times. Maybe Jared Anderson's a good example. 3 times in the top-ranked bubble. He's got a decent amount of exposure. You can probably think of some other fighters like Clay Collard, not in the heavyweight division, obviously, but he's kind of built a little bit of a cult following from being in the top-ranked bubble. There's a couple of other guys who've probably had more exposure than we ever expected they would, like Dex Spellman. He just fought Anthony Yard, and he fought Lyndon Arthur just a couple of weeks back, or 6 or 8 weeks ago. He's probably had career high paydays and exposure as a result of this period. So there are some guys, and it's not necessarily lower tier guys. Yeah, if you're with a promoter and they've got regular cards, there's opportunities if you come at a cost, I would say, that is affordable, because no one is splashing the cash right now, and that's why we're not seeing a lot of fights. Will Magic Man says, whatever happened to Big Baby? Is he still in the mix? He was further suspended by the Nevada State Athletic Commission. They just sort of pushed this out. This was maybe a month, 6 weeks ago, something like that. So they're going to be going back to his case, addressing it. And we'll see what happens. But I don't know if you saw this, and I found this extremely odd, but he posted this clip, which was a montage. So, often a lot of boxing accounts, pretty much strictly boxing and maybe a little bit of peripheral stuff, sort of leveraging on their fame. But he posted this montage video of him cooking like Jamaican fish and chips, which totally sort of caught me off guard. And it was actually, a really well-produced, high-quality video, but it was just like, wow, what's this? So Leonard says, will Jonathan Rice give Ajagba any problems next week? So someone only told me just at the start of the stream that he was facing, Ajagba was facing Jonathan Rice. So I think that's, as I said earlier, the right fight at the right time. I think he is expected to win FA Ajagba, but Rice, when he's in shape, because he was too heavy for the fight with Dempsey McKean. I think he thought he was going to be able to potentially leverage some of because he was over 280 pounds, which is big for Jonathan Rice, but he fought well, and he almost, he was taking rounds, and he put McKean under some intense pressure at times, and he was using that weight, leveraging that to good use at different times. But I think Rice, if he's coming in more around 260, it's going to be good for him, because he is a good mover, he's got a good right hand, and I think Jonathan Rice will fancy his chances of being able to tag F.A. Ajagba, who is not the most defensively responsible guy. Steve says, best hair in boxing. Love the classic Povetkin bowl cut. Yeah, I'm probably not the one to ask about that, but I'm interested to see what people say in the chat there. Big Baby is always in the mix. Drugs mix, that says AZ. Builder666 says, hey, hello to you too. So we've got 65 in the building. Milo Zach 1 says, are you from South Africa? Are you talking to me or someone else? I'm from New Zealand, which is, I think, do you mean South Africa? But definitely no, I'm not from South Africa. I am from New Zealand. Often people do think I'm potentially from Australia, and often people say they think that I'm from the UK. But sometimes I think that may be because maybe my view on something doesn't gel with theirs, so they just go with the default, oh, you must be from the UK, so you're hating. That's the classic one. But also, I would say I've had some really weird randos come to the channel lately with what appears to be canned statements that they're going around all over the YouTube boxing community, saying really weird and random stuff. And when you respond to it, some of the stuff you get back is just like, man, some of these people are just weird. It is deranged stuff, some of it. real generic weirdo stuff, but clearly just going around if they believe, oh, I don't like some of what this channel was saying, or it doesn't fix with the narrative that I'm sort of running with, just copy and paste, copy and paste. So yeah, I've been seeing a little bit of that, but yeah, they don't last too long on the channel if they start sort of abusing me. But Moore says, whatever happened to Carly Meehan's boy? Yeah, good question. So Willis Meehan, he is a guy that's got a lot of talent, but he's been on and off over the past sort of half a dozen years or so in the division. I don't know. He was scheduled for a couple of fights earlier in the year, but sort of COVID hit, and he had been obviously progressing sort of rugby league as a career as well. So yeah, but Willis Meehan's got a lot of talent. Big guy, moves well for a big guy too. Milo Zach says Triple D is going to smash all of these heavyweight bums, starting with Joe Joyce. So 1 hour and 4 into the stream, so I'll take any final questions and comments, and we'll wrap up pretty pretty soon, I would say. Starting to get a little bit dry. I'll just take another sip, but if you've got any final comments or questions, do drop them. So it's yeah, just after lunchtime here. Hour and 5 into the stream, 65 in the building, wherever you are. Thank you for watching morning, noon, or night, wherever you are. And AC saying, Joyce is no bum, he will give Dubois problems. And this is the thing, I mean, so Milo's actually say that Joe Joyce is a bum, but do you want to give Dubois credit for beating him? Because if you do, why would you call him a bum? If you're going to say he's going to smash all of these guys, he's the best in the world, and he's just awesome in that, why would you denigrate the opponent? Because then you can't give him any credit for the win. I've never understand why boxing fans do that. Because you should be saying, actually, Joyce is a tough opponent. If Dubois gets past him, he's the real deal. Then you can get maximum credit for the win. And if it truly is a subpar opponent, then we will soon find out. But I don't believe that Joyce is a bad opponent at all, as AZ says. Chase says Farr has a chance against Parker. I think if he can keep it long, I mean, remembering Junior Farr will be the taller guy by a couple of inches. He's also going to have probably a reach advantage of a few inches as well. If he can manage to keep Parker at the back end of a jab and just box from range, I think that's the way that Farr would get it done. But I'm just not sure that's going to happen. And we've seen in a number of fights, Dominic Gwynn and also against Devin Vargas, Junior Farr susceptible to the left hook. I think that could be a punch that, he's really going to have to guard against. Otherwise, Parker, if Parker can, use his speed, that's going to, because I don't necessarily think that Farr will be able to keep it at range. I think Parker will find a way, even if it's just to the mid-range, and he will be looking to use his speed and skills to, I think he will try to break down and take out Junior Farr. Parker at world level doesn't have, world level knockout power, but Farr is not at world level at this point. I mean, it's an interesting fight to an extent, but I do believe that Parker starts a favorite for a reason. Cash Cow says, Boxing Squared, welcome to the YouTube boxing community rabbit hole. Yeah, I mean, yeah, some of it sometimes is just bizarre. I mean, I just like to get on, do my thing, make my videos, do my live streams, and I'm not here for the drama. I'm here for the boxing. But then you get these weird, I mean, and this is the thing, people come out with these massive statements, slamming the channel, saying all manner of things, but it's so generic, doesn't list any examples, doesn't say anything about what I've said. It's just, da-da-da has forgotten more than this channel will ever know about boxing. This channel will disappear and then re-emerge as something else. And it's like, what are you on about? It's just some weirdo stuff. And this channel's been going strong for 3 years now. Whenever I ever folded up the door and started it again. I haven't. So Nick Harmer in the building saying, big up Boxing Squared in the chat. Donna Bauer says, I know Yard's not a heavyweight, but he did he win today? Yes, he did. Milo Zach says, Joyce is a stepping stone. A dangerous stepping stone, but yeah, he is a stepping stone. But there's still questions about Daniel Dubois. If he can answer them in the Joyce fight and really look fantastic, as he did in the Gorman fight, then, I think he will go from strength to strength. But as you said before, you said Joyce is a bum. I disagree with that. Others will as well. It's going to be, it's one of the better prospect level fights that can be made right now. And hopefully it does happen. Lubak says, great stream again. Thank you very much. Nick Harmer says, 68 in the chat. Smash the like button. Yes, please. On the way in or the way out, that would be much appreciated. Unga says, Far can outbox Parker on the outside, but haven't seen Junior show it recently. Yeah, and that's the thing. You know, I think he might be able to keep it up for a number of rounds, but Joseph Parker moves well. He's got good skills. He's not necessarily a great inside fighter, and this seems to be one of the fallacies that people think that Parker's a great inside fighter. He's not. I mean, he just likes to box. He's good from mid-range, and I mean, if he has the reach advantage, he will try to be the guy that's moving from the outside boxing. But yeah. Cash Cow says Far has no chance against Parker. AZ says Far is so mediocre, I don't see anything he can bother Parker with. Well, I mean, I think he can make it difficult and awkward. If he is the one, if he's coming in shape, he's the taller man with the bigger reach, and if he can box from the outside, frustrate Parker, he could take some rounds. I don't think I'm picking Parker to win that one. Milo Zach says he's met Joseph Parker, lovely bloke and very humble. The Shuba says, I don't know about you, but I've got this feeling Frank is now starting to regret the whole Joyce Dubois fight, and he'll use the lack of crowd as an excuse not to put the fight on. Just a gut feeling. I mean, maybe there's something in there. I don't know. But the thing is as well, Warren needs to put cards on, interesting cards, because it's, at this point, he's still got to make money and he's got to keep his business going. So, once you take out a couple of fighters, there's not a lot of headliners at Queensbury. And that goes the same for, even Matchroom. You take out a couple of guys, not a huge amount of headliners, true headliners that people really want to see. So, I mean, he's going to need to have the likes of Daniel Dubois and Anthony Yard headlining cards, quite regularly too. So Steve says, I hate the drama and the groups and the little wars. It's teenage girl stuff. I try to keep out of it. Woker Sam says, I know you're not into cruiserweight, but Breeders vs. Dorticus is a big event, pretty interesting. And I did actually respond to your comment that you left on the channel the other day. I like that fight. I'll be watching. Just because I'm not covering cruiserweight and other weights doesn't mean that I don't like them. I'm a fan for everything other than heavyweight where I'm covering it for the channel. And that's one of the benefits of doing, this sort of just the one division. I can concentrate on, staying on top of things. And then like this afternoon, I'll be watching the Mean Machine fight. So, Unga says, Far is an excellent boxer. He showed against when he outclassed Makhmedov, but Far hasn't shown his ability in some time. And that's true. And also sometimes he has a tendency, and there's others in the division that do this as well. He tends to fight small. He doesn't really seem to utilize the height and the reach that he does have against some of these guys. So Chase says Gorman versus Larty postponed. Yep, we did cover that the other day. That was a shame. I was looking forward to seeing that tonight, but that is going to be on, I believe, October the 12th. PC Jacob says Parker wins. Force Goes Fabio says have a great weekend, everyone. Ciao, and ciao to you too. Thanks for joining the stream and participating. Appreciate that. So 75 in the building. So smash the like button if you could, either on the way in or the way out. Milozic says saying people are bums was tongue in cheek. I just fancy Dubois to beat everyone in the heavyweight division now. Yeah, I mean, but it's a fine line between saying Joyce is a bum and then, having to walk that back now. I mean, clearly Joyce is a good opponent for this point in Dubois' career. There's certain steps that he's been going through, and this is the best fight on his resume today, if it happens. And this is the reason I want to see it, because I want to know how good Dubois is. We haven't really seen his chin checked, and I rate Dubois highly. I think he is the #1 prospect in the division right now. But there is a sort of case to say that some of these other fights that he's had, like more recently, I mean that Schneider's one didn't get anything from that. Would have much preferred to see the Pfeiffer fight, but it's a shame that one didn't happen. Will Magic Man says Gorman is fighting soon. He's fighting one of Dubois' previous opponents called Larty. Should be good. And actually, Larty and Gorman, both their last losses was to Dubois. So both coming off a Dubois loss facing each other. I like that fight for Gorman because it is a good comeback fight. And Larty, who knows how old he is. But he is entertaining. He will bring it. He's going to probably try to just take Nathan Gorman's head off, and we'll see Nathan Gorman having to react to that. And I would expect he's going to sort of dial back from the Dubois fight where he just tried to brawl his way to victory. I think he will try to rely on his skills. He will know that Lartey is going to come out hard and probably try to just gas him out and then outbox him. I could see that going to a decision. Maybe even Richard Lartey gassing out completely, being taken out. I don't know. We'll have to see. Michael Johnson, Boxing Talk and More is in the building. He says, what up, homies? And Michael does have a YouTube channel. If you haven't checked it out, please do so. Does some very entertaining live streams. Milo Zach says, people keep telling me Dubois isn't ready, but look how old Mike Tyson was when he became world champion. Well, I don't know if people are saying that Dubois isn't ready, but they want to see him in some fights where they can actually assess him. Because remembering, even though Mike Tyson... you know, he came up and he was fighting all manner of guys and fighting very often. But the time he fought for the title, he had fought probably some opposition that is better than the caliber that Daniel Dubois has faced. And we just need to see some of those, you know, sorts of fights. We get a better read on him. No one is not saying that Dubois isn't a talent and doesn't possess, you know, world level ability. We just need to see it now. The whole sort of just fighting guys like Ricardo Schneiders for activity, it's almost a waste of time at this point. Woker Sam says notifications doesn't work sometimes. Yeah, I often get told that for live streams, that it can be one of these things that people just don't know it's on. It's just they might have been coming on as they would normally do just to check out YouTube boxing videos or whatever videos that they do watch on YouTube, and they see, you know, Boxing Squared is live. So yeah, I don't know what that's about. I've had a number of comments sort of saying, but you know, that's not something I can fix at my end, I don't think. So we've got Will Magic Man saying Michael Johnson, Boxing Talk and More, salute. Milozach, correct, Dubois is the best. Believe me, he will go through them all. He's got that devastating speed and power to be a superstar. But this is why we need to see some of these more fights like Joyce and other ones. And arguably the Gorman fight was good. And the one in 2018 against Kevin Johnson, that was a great fight in the context of where Dubois was at that point, because it proved he couldn't just do the same thing and throw the same punches and expect some guy to fall over in front of him. And he got better after that fight because he looked a bit one-paced, a bit average in that fight, but he improved after that. This is why some of these tests we want to see him in, so then he can keep building and get the experience. And this is why, like F.A. Ajagba, even though some people have been critical of him, I actually like the fights that he's been in because they've been good learning fights, and clearly he needs that. What's the point of just feeding him, you know, low-level journeymen that don't offer anything? Because you want to see these guys develop over time, show new wrinkles, show that actually they're improving fight to fight. So when they get to a level where they're starting to contend, you know, in eliminators and, you know, maybe contender level fights, that they've got the experience and they can foot it at that level. So we're 1 hour 17 into the stream. So Milozach says, I agree with your Schneider's comments. He had been fighting at cruiserweight, was an absolute nothing fight. Unga says, who is Ajagba training with? Kay Karoma. So he recently signed on with him. So that's also, was it Michaela Mayer's trainer and a few others as well. But so we're 1 hour 17 in. Feeling like I have been talking all night or something. Yeah, voice is starting to feel a little bit hoarse here. So I'm going to wrap it up now. But yeah, so thank you for joining again, wherever you are, morning, noon or night. I was trying to think of a nice way to end that, but yeah.